Hello, got a little bit of an extra special video for you just to give you a few more images on defects and some details. I'm still asking you to look at sections 10.5 in your text, but let's just remember, here's some additional photos. Defects in woods that can come from the actual drying process in the kiln. So some that happen very locally on the board could be washboarding. What that actually is the open cells of your early or spring wood actually shrink a lot more than the tight close-knit cells of your late or summer wood, and so they raise like ridges, the darker, tighter rings. You can get surface checks, which are splits between the grains or the rings, or end splits where the board just opens up during the drying process. Cupping is a big deal, and cupping can last the length of the board. And what's happening there is, because this is plain sawn, and so you're getting a lot more shrinkage tangentially to the board, you're going to see the edges curl up. Now, they do stack the boards pretty tall when they go into the kiln with little gaps in between them, and that dead weight of all the boards above can keep your lower boards from cupping, but your upper boards are still going to be susceptible. And then honeycombing is actually where tracheids just empty out and the fibers dry out, and you actually will get almost these holes that occur. Along the length of the board, you can also get defects that are very length dependent. And so if we have the board turned on the strong axis and it bows, that's called springing. If we're on the weak axis, so flat, and it bows, that does get the title of bowing. And then of course we also see here twisting. And there's an additional image of the cupping that can be expected, and especially in a plain sawn log, and you can see then how where the board comes out of the log would affect whether or not you would see cupping and how much. So those upper and lower boards would get the most cupping. And then we can even see, we don't expect a lot of deformation on a radial sawn board, but if you start pulling stuff out that are more plain sawn, you can actually get warping of elliptical shapes or circular shapes, or warping of square shapes that can come. Now, those are both defects from drying, but boards can naturally have defects in them as well, just because it's an organic material. So when we look at the center of a tree where we have the pith or the heart of the tree, you can get splits that come out from there, and those splits are called shakes, and it's called a heart or a star shake. You can also get splits between the rings, which are called ring shakes, and then a radial shake that happens in the radial direction along the rings, or normal to the rings. You can get a radial shake or split. So the cracks, the splits, are called shakes. Now, the other main natural defect are going to be your knots, and here we can see a lot of different names for knots, but knots pretty much come from branches or growths that tried to happen on the tree. The big challenge of the knot is one that wood tends to be much harder and separate from the wood around it, so it can act definitely like a stress concentrator. But we also see, and this is so important, we see the grains change direction, and so you could be loading lovely. We could see right here, we'd have nice load parallel to grain, and then we hit these grains and we're actually loading perpendicular to grain. It changes the behavior of the wood, and that's where it becomes a challenge.